Welcome back to Rev'd Up for Sunday, everyone. We're the two of the clergy of St. Mark's Episcopal Church in New Canaan, Connecticut. I'm Elizabeth Garnsey.
And I'm Peter Walsh.
And we've reached the second Sunday after the Epiphany, and we're starting in on some of these beautiful texts about finding out who Jesus is and him calling disciples. So let's hear the text. This is John 1, verses 43 to 51. Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him about whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." When Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, he said of him, "Here is truly an Israelite, in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael asked him, "Where did you get to know me?" Jesus answered, "I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you." Nathanael replied, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered, "Do you believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Very truly I tell you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." Gospel of the Lord.
Thanks be to God and amen.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. Just a note to Father John, who's not with us today, who's off with his wife Emma at an ethicist conference in Chicago. They're all deciding big decisions here at the ethicist conference. And as we take a look at this gospel, let me just start off with giving us some context. Last week we were in Mark's gospel where the heavens opened and the Spirit. Jesus had himself a mystical experience of sorts, and now today Jesus is going to tell us that the heavens are going to open. Jesus himself is going to be an epiphany, but let's set the context in John's gospel. So remember, those of you who are following, and some of you are experts in this, we begin with the prologue, the great setting of Jesus as the Word, and then the Word becomes flesh, and now John really starts to land the plane, and he lands the plane here with testimony from John about who John is, and then the next day we get Jesus coming toward him, and he says, "Behold the Lamb of God," so we're switching again. And then the next day, Jesus calls the disciples, the two disciples who follow Jesus, one being Andrew, and then eventually we get the story of Simon Peter joining in, and now here we are the next day. So John starts us off with several days of Jesus down along the water, and we might note here that just to talk about who we're talking about here. Why don't we start there too?
Okay, yeah.
We're talking about Philip and Nathanael. Philip is in all the synoptic gospels listed as a disciple, but he's not one of the big guys, right? He's not Peter, James, and John, or Andrew, who doesn't actually get a lot of press, but was the first guy to show up. And then we have Nathanael, who's by name shows up only in John's gospel. And he shows up in chapter 1, and he's going to show up in chapter 21 as Nathanael of Cana, interestingly, switching neighborhoods here. And then we have, of course, that Nathanael, of course, to those who follow this drama, then Nathanael might be Bartholomew.
Right.
And a lot to say about that, but I'll just say for those of you who really get sort of interested in these little things, that in the synoptic gospels, every time Philip's name appears, Bartholomew follows immediately thereon. So, these are the guys we're talking about. This is the kind of place. And Jesus has made the decision to go to Galilee. So unlike Luke and Mark, the Spirit is not driving him. He's like, where shall I go?
Right.
I'll go to Galilee.
Right, he has full command in this gospel.
Yeah.
He's not being driven anywhere in John.
Yeah,
He's the driver.
Yeah, he's the driver. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great background. This is definitely a second half of a great passage. So if people could take the time to read the full of John 1 altogether, this fits nicely, obviously well into the context. So it's super helpful to have that background. Also, as a footnote, having served several years and come up through St. Bartholomew's Church.
Oh, you're an expert.
We spent a lot of time making sure this was Bartholomew, and we all hoped it was, because he's such a great character. And, maybe that's a great place to start. I think, it's maybe plunging into the middle, but Nathaniel, he's such a great figure in this passage because he's like the kind of cool skeptic, can anything good come out of Nazareth? He's kind of a smart aleck. So I like that he's got some attitude. And yet he's so open, he goes on to be so receptive and profoundly changed by Jesus. And, interestingly, some consider Nathaniel to possibly be the new Jacob. I don't know if you came across that in your reading.
Yeah.
But I think that's I haven't really ever noticed that before, but until this time around of studying this, but maybe that's old hat for you. But, Jacob, here Jesus calls Nathaniel, in whom there is no guile, no deceit, but Jacob, of course, was full of guile and deceit. And we see with Nathaniel, he's kind of a smart aleck, he's not without guile. He's
let me start there with it. Let's move to Jacob, the question of the Israelite and Jacob. Yeah. But let me just start with, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Okay. Which we in our with our ears here is the smart aleck thing. Oh wow, this guy, he'd be funny to hang out with, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And then, as I mentioned on some of these previous podcasts, that you guys might be surprised, we actually do look at this stuff before we start talking, and was reading about and listening about this. And one of the commentators was noting that this actually is not a smart aleck comment. What this is, and it gets tied in with the fig tree. Mm-hmm. And so I saw you under the fig tree, which we take, or I take. I won't royal we that, and I certainly don't want to speak for you. Or John is not even here. But that I saw you under the fig tree. It always seemed to me was that in John's gospel, Jesus always knows about the person he's speaking to. I mean, look at the woman at the well, right? Mm-hmm. The Samaritan woman at the well. And this is part of his ability to know the truth of souls, know the truth of people. And the commentary I was talking about, maybe I'm blending two here, we're talking about this question of the fig tree. So the fig tree actually represents as an idiom in the time of Jesus, Hebraic time of Jesus, as one who sits under the fig tree and studies the scriptures. Right. Mm-hmm. And all I could think of was, the Buddha sat under, was it the bonsai tree or something like that? The Bodhi tree. Yeah. It's not to be confused, the bonsai tree. The Bodhi tree and reach
Confucius
enlightenment.
was under the bonsai tree.
Okay, that's a good call, just conflating a few stories here. But this was the Bodhi tree, and that what we had in Nathaniel was a guy who's been studying the scriptures and knew that there was no reference to Nazareth in the scriptures with reference to prophecy. So, and that when Jesus says, I saw you under the tree, it wasn't just, I saw you. It was, I know that you study the scriptures. Right. So, I don't know what to make of it, but it is interesting to round it a little bit.
It is. And in John, we get to do that because everything means three things,
That's true.
And I think it is certainly that Nazareth is a no place, nothing. And what Nathaniel doesn't account for is that Jesus comes from this nothing town unnamed in the Hebrew scriptures, but he's also with God in the beginning, is the Word. Before all things came into being, all things came into being through him. There's this context and origin story that is the right opposite of what he's assuming Jesus is.
Yeah, okay. Oh, I'm just leaping over the top of what you were saying. And just to say, look at this. You and I know that, and the readers all know this, but Philip and Nathaniel don't know for nothing about the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, right? Yeah. They how could they not see Jesus but as a guy of sorts? Yeah. I mean, Jesus hasn't done anything yet. Right. There's no teaching. There's no miracles. He's still down there on the sands along the Jordan River and Bethany on the other side, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so what I really dig about this is that the very charism of Jesus is such that without any empirical evidence, he can say to Philip, follow me. And Philip's like, this guy's got something, I'm going to follow him. Right. And so what we just Jesus as the Christ, as the spiritual power that he is enough to have this beginning of this following. And then it's enough to convert Nathaniel, who is skeptical, as you said. He's, no matter how you cut it, his first impression ain't great.
Right. I mean, I think that I don't know about Nathaniel, but Andrew, of course, was, and possibly Philip were disciples of John the Baptist, right? And it's John the Baptist who has suggested to them that, look, here's the Lamb of God. There he goes. And they're heightened to pay attention. But this, in John, there's that important verb to see. And, belepo just means, I noticed out of my eyeballs.
Right.
But
that's right.
I guess what's the other one? Adon. Adon is the Greek word for to really see, pierce into your soul of someone. And that's the one for John the Baptist. He sees into Jesus and who he really is. And then that's what Jesus does with Nathaniel. I saw you, I Adon you under the fig tree before Philip called you. And, could really peer into his soul, like you said. And so I think in John, we're going to see that over and over with the whole seeing. And it's such a huge theme.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I didn't see that in this, but I'm chuckling because I preached an Easter sermon on the 3 C's in the resurrection account.
Oh, right.
Remember the first seeing in you don't have to say I remember your sermon because it was so riveting. that when Peter and John first get to the tomb, they look in and Peter just sees it physically, and then the second one that you're talking about, John sees it. That he sees it with spiritual insight, and then the third C that is used is Mary's. Sees with conversion.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I didn't pick that up.
Right.
You know what? I think that what I love is Jesus, and I love the charism that he has. And I love John's gospel in great part because it is so different than the synoptics. And in the call story, nothing is, Jesus says, follow me, or Nathaniel's like, you are, Nathaniel starts, wow, you're the Son of God because you saw me sitting under a tree kind of thing. But the call is not to mission. This is not, I'll make you fishers of people.
Right.
This is the call to an epiphany, that you follow me and you will see God. That's we're in the season of epiphany, and that you'll see God in the person of Jesus. And that is what transforms.
Yes.
It's the seeing of Godness in Jesus, the Christness.
Right.
Who, and in John's gospel, comes from Nowheresville. It makes a big deal out of that because it says right in the prologue that he came to his people, but they didn't recognize him, and even Nathaniel didn't recognize him in the beginning of this too.
Right. Yeah, that's the theme sentence of John. He came into his own, and his own didn't receive him. But back to Nathaniel and the Jacob parallel, I think that we can't really underscore that enough. That when Jacob in Genesis 28 has this dream, laying on his pillow, he's fleeing from his brother Esau because Jacob has been a real jerk and deceived his brother, and Esau's out to kill him. Yes, he's full of guile. So he sleeps in the forest and has this dream of the ladder, which we get reference to in the bottom of this passage, that heavens open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. Jacob dreamt of this ladder where he saw angels coming and going from heaven, and he wakes up and says, surely I'm in the presence of God.
Right.
And so Nathaniel here, he's sitting under the fig tree. He's kind of skeptical, can anything good come out of Nazareth? And then the minute Jesus sees him, he's completely transformed. He has this encounter like a dream. And his instant transformation, the way that Jacob is, and God renames Jacob, Israel, my people who see me with rapture.
Wrestle, I always thought that was wrestle with God, but yeah,
it is too. I think there's multiple meanings to Israel, but it's clearly like the people who can perceive and be with, who've seen God, and wrestled, and wrestle. But in any case, it's the idea is the encounter is transformative, and Jacob names that place a holy place. And Nathaniel here turns on a dime and starts to follow, and Jesus promises him that he will see angels ascending and descending. And here it's Jesus who's the ladder, the ladder between heaven and earth, and the bridge.
That's the big deal. That's the big deal in the piece. That's the climax of the piece. And thank you for talking about it and laying out the Jacob portion.
I guess I only bring it up because John starts with that creation parallel, and it's sort of John is like a epic telling, recasting of all the Hebrew story. from the beginning, and we're only in the chapter 1, and we're already at Jacob and a new Israel sort of thing. So.
Yeah, this is why if you're going to write a commentary for John, it has to be 2 volumes.
Yeah.
Because if you're really going to plug into it, I mean, by going to Raymond Brown in the 2 volumes, you can't get it into one because everything alludes to something else. Mm-hmm. And I think that the Jacob story takes place. He renames the place Bethel, Beth being place of or village of, Bethlehem. Bethlehem means town of bread, village of bread, and Bethel, El as Elohim. This is place of God, and so as your comment being that Jesus is the place of God here, and he's not just a messenger. He's not just an angel running up and down the ladder. He's the place of the encounter with the divine God. Right. That's what's being said in the allusion. And Nathaniel can get this because Nathaniel under the fig tree has been studying this. And I just say for my own life and maybe for yours and maybe for yours and maybe for Rob who's back there behind the camera, I think the power of this for me as I think about Jesus in my own life and my devotion to Jesus, has a lot to do with this. Jesus as the ladder to God, and that in Jesus the infinity of God and the affinity of our lives meet the eternity of God, and the temporal nature of our lives meet and that it all comes together, time and eternity, and it can all be contemplated in one. And that in that passage where it says, I have to look at it so I don't get it wrong here. Where does it say? Very truly I tell you, you will see heaven opened. And those 2 yous, back to you're talking about the Greek, those 2 yous are suddenly switched into the plural, so that what John is saying to us, this is not just for Nathaniel, this is for all of us. We are Jacob's ladder is Jesus' ladder, Jesus the ladder. Yeah,
right. That's such a good point. Yeah. Also, can we talk about this invitation, come and see? I love that. And there are several kind of mic drop, maybe gentle mic drop phrases in John where Jesus just has these lines, or not just Jesus, but John, the way John writes, he's got here, come and see. It says everything about who Jesus is and what we're called to do. And then, later we get something like his encounter with Pilate, where Pilate says, what is truth? And there's another place at Lazarus' tomb earlier where it says Jesus wept. Just this loaded 1 or 2 word things. And at the end of the gospel, we get Mary's encounter in the garden with Jesus, and all he has to do is say her name, and the whole entire earth shakes. And it's just, to me, like such a loaded 1 word thing. I mean, John is so powerful about these phrases. And so come and see, I think it's one of the iconic ones in John. Yeah. And, it recurs. It's here for the first time. It occurs again at the woman at the well, where she goes off and tells all her friends, come and see. That's right. Good call. You're right. Come and see the one. And then when they bring Jesus to Lazarus' tomb, Martha says, come and see where they've laid my brother. Yeah. And then again, when they find Jesus on the cross, come and see what they've done. And then when the disciples come to the empty tomb, come and see. They invite each other, come and see. The tomb is empty. So this is a powerful invitation, and huge points in the gospel where it recurs. Yeah. So I think it's worth noting, and it's also such an invitation to us too. Like in the passage before this that you were talking about, he says, come and, they say, where are you staying? And he says, come and see. It's just such the gentle invitation to the whole world of Jesus, Yeah, and the great part, you named it, that not only do you get the gentle come and see, but if you have the latter experience, the experience of Jesus is that in his personhood you experience the divine. That's the gentle come and see then plugs you into right. I mean, it's like taking your toaster oven and plugging it into the power source that powers your whole community. Blows your toaster apart. Right. And that's what happens to these guys. I mean, it blows their toasters apart. Yeah. These gentle come and sees. We think of them as being martyred for their devotion to Jesus, which started with something as come and see. I mean, if Nathaniel was Bartholomew,
Me telling you, El Experto in St. Bartholomew's Church in Park Avenue, a great church. If you're in New York City, go find it. That he was flayed to death. In fact, on the Reredas back here, we have 3 knives up here. We got a lot of death instruments on our Reredas here, but the conversion was to a life so great that it even made this life be like, yeah, this is good, but there's a better life. There's a deeper life. That's the power of the come and see, what it leads to, what Jesus leads to, the overwhelming presence, the radiating divinity of Jesus.
Yeah. And it's not come and like gawk at the miracles or anything like that. It's come and like learn how to see. Come and like see with your, come aid on, see with your heart and perceive. So, I think there's so much in it, and it also invites our, action and then contemplation.
100%. You're right about that, and thanks for saying that. That's really helpful because these guys don't. This come and see is an initiation into an epiphany that is a journey. It's not an all one thing. It's an epiphany that's a journey that will lead to the full revelation of the glory of God, which in John's gospel is the crucifixion, the resurrection, the ascension. But their conversion is not instantaneous. Even though Nathaniel leaps immediately to "You're the Son of God," which he would have been great on a game show. A very quick thinker.
Hit the
buzzer. But it's initiation to a journey, and the revelation of the who-ness of Jesus is unfolds, as you say in John's beautiful mystical writing.
Yeah, gorgeous.
Hey, will you just say one more thing before we go here? I want to, because I ran over the top of it or I stopped it. I just want to come back to this. Jacob is the new Israel. In Israel in whom there is no guile. I just want to revisit that one sec because we said that we would. So this is about the only time that people in the New Testament are called an Israelite. And Jacob, point. Jacob is a serious dude of guile. He has made his way with guile, and he's been very good at it. But it's bad for his soul. And he comes back to do something right for his soul. So that's the end of the Jacob story here. And now we have a Nathaniel, this one in whom there is no guile, which is the old translation. Deceit is the new one. I love the no guile.
I know.
It sounds way
so
better.
Good. It does.
That he would be the new Israel, the new person of
sort
Israel.
of like the prototype of new humanity.
Yeah, say something about that.
God, it's not to replace Israel or Israelites. It's just, the ideal Israelite is one who can sort of see and perceive the presence of God when they're in front of it.
Yeah,
I think
that's it. That's good.
So,
that's good.
So you named it. I think this is the ultimate invitation to an epiphany. And here we are, second Sunday of an Epiphany. We have a pretty short round of Epiphany lectionaries this year because Ash Wednesday is barreling up upon us. So buckle your seatbelts because Epiphany season lectionary is so good. And I think we're going to continue to have a lot of fun with this. Please leave us a voicemail. We really love your comments and appreciate always when you take the time to respond to what we say and to respond to us with your wisdom too. So that number is 203-442-5002. Any last word, Peter? Okay, well, John, we'll see you next time, and thanks for joining us. Have a blessed week.